Been thinking a lot lately about how people become radicalized, and part of what happens is that there's either a race or a sex that feels like they're being mistreated or misrepresented or underrepresented, or that they see the other side or their opposite getting some kind of special treatment. So, I mean, at its core, it has something to do with a perceived injustice of some sort. And the focus becomes primarily based on something like race or sex. And then we have the media that comes in and generally will show one side of an issue that points towards something radical. An example would be that the shooting that just happened in Buffalo broadcast quite a bit, and the character of the person who done it was described quite a bit. Yet that subway shooter in New York City was not described hardly at all on media. Point being, the media plays a big role in why people become radicalized. And it's not just the media, though. I've mentioned this numerous times. It's the school system. The school system gives us part of history, part of the story, part of the global context. And leaving those things out ends up with a narrow view of why something happened or why something has taken place. Every time I get on social media, there's a discussion that has to do with race, what has white people done in the past, or what is black people doing currently, what sex is doing what. And there's like a constant battle going on. And when I think of the term radical, I also think of the word extreme, because our media and school system are on the extreme left. So what we get from them, what the majority of us get, is an angle that's going to feed into that far left narrative. And then we have that constant community battle, or battle of the races, or battle of the sexes, that's prompted primarily by the way the school system and the media handles information. I'm not saying injustices don't happen within any of those groups, but to the extent that it's lopsided is a narrative painted by the media and the school system. I get really frustrated at times with discussions with people, because it don't seem like we can come to an agreement or a consensus or a balance in thought about how we view each other and how we view society. Very frustrating. And anytime that I try to point back towards the founding of our country, right away it's, well, the country was founded by white people for white people. My point in this is that our founding principles, not the people who created the principles themselves of liberty, justice, and freedom for all people, meaning all sexes, all races, that's the center part that we seem to all be missing. This country was founded to make that kind of thing develop, regardless of who wrote the principles down. The principles are timeless. They're objectively moral in and of themselves. There doesn't have to be any explaining going on about the value of having liberty. Obviously, liberty has its boundaries. But if we don't, as communities and as political leaders in the country, reference that center, not center, if we don't reference that and function from there, maybe over one direction or another a little bit, to hear sides and to consider how each one might be overriding or overreaching on the other, the country will not be able to continue as it is. Those people who want complete and total power, elites who want that, the country's going to the direction that will give them what they want. Meaning it doesn't matter what your color or sex. If you ever get in the way of whatever the new thing is to follow and do to create more power, if you get in the way of that, you're going to be marginalized. You're going to be put to the side. All of us are at risk for that happening. If we don't understand that as communities, as people, we can start with that center part that's a balance and talk around that area. But when we start swinging to the far right, to the far left, and it has to do with that, it's ideology and it's politics. We tend to fall in areas based on radical ideas that take us over to a racial side or a sexist side because we think there's an issue there that's being overlooked or underlooked. So I guess the main thing, the most frustrating part is, again, the loudest mouths in our country are generally people that's far to the left or far to the right. And the sensible people of the country don't get to talk much because they get bombarded with people who are not seeking balance. So I want to encourage all the people, male, female, black and white, rich and poor, who are striving to find that middle ground. Middle ground being that balanced area. Please keep talking about it and keep promoting it. If we don't, it's just like anywhere else, and you could even think about it being in a classroom. The loudest mouth in a classroom gets to do all the talking. And then there's this idea that what that person said is what the majority of people think, because other people won't step in and talk, or they're not given time to talk. Our freedom of speech is important. So that includes hearing that bombardment from the extremes on one side or the other. But we as common people, normal people, balanced people, we need to also be in this conversation, because there's a lot of sensible people out here, and we need to lift each other up and build each other up. The country is becoming smaller. Because of technology, the world's becoming smaller. The threat of those elite people who, what their concern is power, money, or influence just to get done what they want done specifically for them, that's happening already on a global scale. And the one thing America has, and that its founding is on, are those principles that give us, regular people, the authority to shape the culture of our country. And I don't mean everybody needs to behave the same way and look the same way and act the same way. I'm talking about a culture of principles that this thing was founded on. Just give it some thought.